What is up, everyone? This is another episode of Talking Sports with TC, and today I want to talk about the first couple months of the NBA season as well as the 75 greatest players list. I'll break down that list and mention who should be on that list or who should not be on that list. So let's kick it off with the 75th anniversary of the NBA season. And this has been a pretty good season so far. There's been a lot of good basketball played. So I want to break down both conferences and tell you the teams that are the top teams to beat right now, the biggest surprise from each conference, as well as the biggest disappointment or disappointments from each conference. So let's start off in the Eastern Conference, where the top teams right now are the Brooklyn Nets, Milwaukee Bucks, Miami Heat, and surprisingly, the Chicago Bulls. Now, the Bulls, going to focus on them for a second. They did make some key offseason moves with the sign and trade for Alonzo Ball and bringing in DeMar DeRozan, as well as bringing in some other key players. They did trade for Lauri Markkanen to the Cavaliers. As a result of this, the Bulls have managed to be tied atop first place in the Eastern Conference. And they, as of today, they have won 7 straight games in a row, especially with DeMar DeRozan, the way he's been playing lights out. 2 buzzer beaters in a row, both on the road. One New Year's Eve, last Friday against the Pacers here in Indianapolis, and then Saturday against the Wizards in DC. So DeMar DeRozan has been playing lights out. So has Lonzo Ball. Zach LaVine has been turning a MVP caliber season as well. Now, as far as with the other top teams in the East, let's talk about the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, the Bucks did have a slow start to the season earlier in the year, mainly due because of the championship hangover. But Giannis is back to his usual MVP form. Holiday has recovered nicely from his injury. And Middleton, say what you want about Chris Middleton and his game not being complimentary to Giannis, but Middleton is a 3-time All-Star for a reason because he is a solid player. He may not be a superstar per se, but he is a star player. And when he gets it right, and when Holiday gets it right, and Giannis is in top form, then the Bucks are still the champions, and they're still the team to beat, in my opinion, in the East until the other contenders in the East decide to dethrone them or want to dethrone them, which ultimately it could happen, but then again, they could repeat as Eastern Conference champs once again this season. Now let's talk about the Brooklyn Nets. Now the Nets, main reason why they're on top of the conference is because of Kevin Durant. Now Kevin Durant has been playing hero ball the entire season. Now granted, they had James Harden miss some time due to injuries and COVID. They had Kyrie with his vaccination, his refusal to get vaccinated, which is the main issue. But he is scheduled to play a good chunk of minutes tonight against the Pacers here in Indianapolis. So that should be a very good game with Kyrie Irving back. Now, can this be sustained with the Nets and Durant playing hero ball? Yeah, he's logged arguably the most minutes in the league this season. And because of that, you don't want him to get tired and worn down towards the stretch run and come playoff time. If that's when you need him the most. So having Kyrie playing in these games that are not in New York City is going to be a huge impact. How much of an impact it will make, we don't know for sure, but we'll see what happens in that regard. Then let's talk about the Miami Heat. Now, the Heat made some interesting moves this offseason. They bring in PJ Tucker from the Milwaukee Bucks from their championship squad last season. Kyle Lowry was arguably the most underrated pickup in free agency this year, in my opinion, because of Lowry being a steady influence in point guard. Now, granted, he's not the flashiest point guard in the league, but he's gritty, he's tough, and he has a very efficient and solid offensive game. Add that with Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and you got Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson who are shooting lights out from the perimeter. The Heat could be the dark horse in the Eastern Conference this year. Given the fact that they've been there and done that with a finals appearance in the bubble tournament postseason a couple years back, that I don't see any reason why the Heat should be able to make a run again in this upcoming postseason. Now, my biggest surprise so far in the Eastern Conference are the Cleveland Cavaliers. There wasn't a whole lot to be expected for the Cavaliers this season. I did not expect them to win 20 games at this point in the season. I picked them to win at least 24 to 25 games. But they have surprised a lot of people, especially in the Eastern Conference. Right now, as where things stand, they are currently sixth in the East. Now, will they be able to hold up and continue to play as well as they have all season? That remains to be seen. This is a young team, and with a young team, you get a lot of peaks and valleys. But they do have a pretty good coach in JB Bickerstaff, who is the son of legendary coach Bernie Bickerstaff. So if JB Bickerstaff can continue to steady the ship and keep this young team hungry, focused, but yet disciplined, then the Cavaliers may make some noise come playoff time if they're able to make it there. Now, as far as with my disappointments in the Eastern Conference, I got two teams actually, who made some surprising runs last year, and we were expecting big things from them, but they just have fallen flat all season. That would be the Atlanta Hawks and the New York Knicks. Now, as many of you fans know, the Hawks made a surprising run to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, before ultimately falling to the Bucks in 6 games. Coming into the season, well, a lot of fans around the league thought that Atlanta was going to carry over that success. But that has not happened. I'm not sure why. They got the nucleus and the players in their core back from last season. So hopefully they could turn around. Now, as far as with the Knicks, they were also expected to improve on last season's showing in the first round when they lost to the previous aforementioned Hawks. However, there's been inconsistent play. There's been injuries, mainly to Kemba Walker. And I'm not sure if the Knicks could turn around, but this is a long season. It's 82 games. And if the Knicks can get hot at the right time, then they could sneak in, if not in the top 6, maybe one of those play-in tournament spots, which is 7 to 10 in the Eastern Conference. So that's my breakdown for the East. Now let's move to the other side, the Western Conference. Now the Western Conference has been pretty much top-heavy in terms of the top of the league. Golden State, my goodness, man. I did not expect Golden State to just catch fire like they did, like they have so far. Steph Curry, if he doesn't win MVP, then something is wrong. Right now, he is the MVP of the league if the award was given out today. But they don't give out awards in mid-season. They give them out at the end of the season. If Steph continues on this torrid pace the rest of the year, he's going to win his MVP, probably unanimously. And the return of Klay Thompson is also going to pay dividends. We don't know if he's going to be back to the Klay of old, but if they can get at least some version of the old Klay back when he returns later on this month, then the Warriors they're a dangerous team, but they're going to be even more dangerous when Klay Thompson finally returns on the court. Draymond Green has also had a very solid season. Usually he's doing his usual rebound and playing defense. Offensively, he's actually picked it up quite nicely as well. Now, I believe that the Warriors, they will may hit a stumbling block or two, but if they could continue on this pace after the All-Star break into the playoffs, then it will serve notice that the last couple years was just a hiccup because of injuries and just the roster was depleted. But given the fact that they drafted a couple young players, they have a pretty nice size, a decent nucleus of role players on their team, then Golden State could win the West. Now, the other 2 teams in the West that could challenge them are the Phoenix Suns and the Utah Jazz. Many people thought that Phoenix's run to the finals was a fluke. I don't think it was a fluke. I mean, Phoenix just hasn't been there in a long time, and it ultimately fell short to the Milwaukee Bucks in the finals, which is an excellent finals, by the way. A lot of people thought that the Suns were going to fall off because of the emergence of teams like, the Lakers and the Clippers and the Jazz and the resurgence of the Warriors. But the Suns, with the steady hand of Chris Paul, Devin Booker's played lights out, DeAndre Ayton is growing leaps and bounds, Mikal Bridges is turning into an elite D&3 player. The Suns, will pose a challenge to Golden State in the West if they continue on the pace that they have been so far this season. Now, the other team in the West that's the top team in the West is Utah. Now, Utah's biggest concern will be injuries. I mean, Mitchell's missed some games, the last couple games. If Mitchell is 100%, then the offense comes and goes when he's on the floor. When he's on the floor, Utah's tough to beat. When he's not on the floor, they struggle. So the help for Donovan Mitchell plus Rudy Gobert providing a solid anchor on rebounding and defense, and occasionally chipping in with double digit figures in scoring. So if Rudy Gobert can somehow be steady down the low block, and the other players like Joel Ingles, Mike Conley, and Royce Young can also step up, then Utah is going to be a tough out for anyone in the West. Now, those are my top teams in the West. Now, as far as with the surprise in the Western Conference, it would be the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, they had a nice run last year in the play-in tournament, and they stole the first game in Utah in the first round of the playoffs last year for ultimately losing in 5 games. Now, with a healthy John Morant and a healthy Jaren Jackson, the Grizzlies are currently 4th in the Western Conference. Now, whether this holds up, it will be determined on 2 things. It will be determined on health and just they haven't been down this road before. This is a young team, so there's going to be a lot of peaks and valleys, as I said before, with Cleveland. But just like with Cleveland, Memphis has more enough young talent and the right coach to where they could continue on his success. Now, the health of Jaren Jackson and John Morant is critical. If they could play at minimum 65 to 70 games this season, then Memphis will grab that top 4, top 5 slot in the Western Conference. Now, as far as with the disappointments, where do I begin? Oh, yes, the Los Angeles Lakers. This is not surprising to me that they're struggling because of their age. This is a old roster. As a matter of fact, per average age, they are the oldest roster in the history of the NBA. Now, this is no knock against the Lakers at all. I'm just being honest. When you have players who have all this mileage on them, and you're just throwing in players like Carmelo Anthony, you're throwing in Russell Westbrook, to add with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, then you throw in guys like Dwight Howard, Trevor Ariza, who else? DeAndre Jordan was added to the Lakers. You throw in all these veteran players, then yeah, all these players with all this mileage, and it's going to cause a lot of wear and tear. Now, whether they can right the ship and get that top 6 spot in the West, that remains to be seen. But it's going to be dependent on the health of the team. Right now, Anthony Davis is out for 4 weeks with a leg injury. I don't know if he's going to be 80% when he returns on the court. LeBron is getting up there in age. He just turned 37 this past month, and I don't know how much he has left. He's missed some time with a oblique injury earlier in the year. So I don't know if he's going to last a full season and play a full season if he suffers another injury. So I am not surprised that the Lakers are where they are right now. I'm not surprised because given, like I said before, given the fact that this is the oldest team in the league and you throw in all these parts that don't fit with Frank Vogel's scheme in terms of what they're trying to run, then it might be a quick exit again for the Lakers. I'll be surprised if they get a top 6 spot because at this point I see them being in the play-in tournament once again. And as we saw last year actually, anything can happen in the play-in tournament. So if they could somehow get right either before the All-Star break or after the All-Star break, then I think they'll have a shot of at least, again, that top 6 spot in the Western Conference. But a lot of things will have to fall on their lap or work in their favor for them to even sniff that. All right, so that wraps up the recap for the first couple months of the NBA. Lastly, let's talk about the 75th anniversary list for the NBA. As I mentioned earlier, this is 75 years of the association, and to commemorate it, they issued out a 75 greatest players list. Now, I looked at this list when it was revealed back in October, and some of the selections on this list were just mind-boggling to me. How in the world do you put Anthony Davis, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, and Damian Lillard on that list? I don't understand it. Now, I get it. You know, whoever voted on this list, there was a lot of recency bias, in my opinion, with this list. But I want to just break down each player here and say why they should not be on this list. Let's start off with Russell Westbrook. Now, yes, Russell Westbrook has the most triple doubles in history in the NBA, but he's never been a good teammate. His shooting percentage has already been the lowest in the league of with qualified players over the last several years, and he comes across as a stat stuffer. The fact that he's not a good teammate, he doesn't shoot well at all, and he just goes out and just stuffs the stats. To me, that makes him a good player, but not an all-time great, in my opinion. Yeah, you can average a triple-double 3 consecutive years, but that means absolutely nothing if you can't get your team to gel and be a leader. So because of that, he's off my list. Now, the second person I want to break down, who has been on my all-time like crap list, is James Harden. Now, yes, James Harden has won an MVP award. Yippee. Okay, James Harden is arguably one of the best scorers in the league. But his game is not aesthetically pleasing to me at all. There's times to where during this run in Houston to where he would score 40, 50, or 60 points, but it would take him 40, 50, or 60 shots to get the 60 points. Now, granted, some of that was inflated due to him going to the foul line, but when you're taking 40 shots or 50 shots to get 40 or 50 points, that's not an efficient and effective game. He is the true essence of what we call an ISO player, where he gets his, but he doesn't do it for me in other areas. Like his passing, his assist have not been top tier in terms of top players in the league in terms of assist wise for a guard. Now they put him at point guard in Houston, and for him being a point guard, I would say the point guard should average anywhere between 8 to 9 assists a game. But he's averaging 4 or 5 assists. You don't need your point guard to average that low amount of assists. Again, and as I said before, I mean, his game is just not appealing to me at all. He's an excellent player. He's a good player. But to me, he's like a poor man's version of Bernard King, in my opinion. So I would get him off that list. The third player I'm going to discuss is Anthony Davis. Now, I want to say why Anthony Davis should not be on this list is because of one reason. He hasn't played a whole lot of games in his career. He has missed so much time in his brief career with injuries. Now, if he played like maybe 70, 72 games a season, maybe 75 games a year, and put up those numbers with more games, then I'll consider him an all-time great. But because the fact that he's missed a lot of time with injuries, he's always hurt. Evidence as we've seen this year. He's a good player, but he's not a 75 great player. He's not on that list, in my opinion. So get him out of there. And then the fourth player I'm going to break down is Damian Lillard. Now, yes, Damian Lillard is one of the best players in the league. I'll say top 5, top 10. But Portland has not done a whole lot in terms of team success. Now, granted, they made the playoffs 9 straight years, but they only made one trip to the Western Conference Finals, and that was a couple years ago. But they've always had early exits in the postseason. And because of that, Damian Lillard is an excellent player. But is he an all-time great? No, not to me. He's not an all-time great. So get him off that list. So those are the 4 players that I would remove from that list. And here's all the 4 players that, in my view, should have been on that list and, quite frankly, should be on that list. Let's start off with Alex English, the great scorer for the Denver Nuggets. He is top 10, top 15 all-time in scoring. This guy has over 25,000 points in his career. And if you if you had a chance to watch any old clips or watch some of the games live like I did when I was a kid, that kind of shows my age here. But I remember watching him play in the mid to late 80s when I was a youngster. And this guy had a smooth, silky jumper. He could drive to the basket. He could just score with relative ease and just make it look just effortless. So because the fact that he has over 25,000 points in his career, one of the all-time great scorers in the league, and the Denver Nuggets were a pretty solid team in the 1980s. So put him on that list. He's a Hall of Famer. He's one of the top 15, 20 scorers in the NBA. Put him on that list. The second player I'll put on that list is Vince Carter. The fact that he came into the league as a high flyer, but left the league as more of a refined perimeter player. That's the reason why he was in the league for as long as he was, because he had to change his game, just like what Jordan did when he first came into the league. Vince Carter had to do the same thing, because all that high flying he did in his early days caught up with him in terms of injuries. But given the fact that he was able to refine his game, and he played 22 years in the NBA, the most seasons ever that a player's played in the association. The fact that he scored is 25,000 points on a dunk. And I do remember that because I was actually at that game in Atlanta a couple years ago when that happened. He should be in the Hall of Fame. Now, he doesn't have a ring. He didn't get a chance to get outside the first round of the playoffs that much. But given his longevity, and he has 25,000 points, in my opinion, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He should be on that 75th anniversary team. Now, the third player that should be on that list, in my opinion, is Chris Mullin. Now, a lot of people are saying, why are you going to pick Chris Mullin? Well, I'll tell you why. In his prime, Chris Mullin was one of the best scorers in the NBA in the late 80s, early 90s. That Run TMC team for the Warriors during that time, they were a very exciting team to watch. And I enjoyed watching Chris Mullin. Now, some people may say, oh, you're going to put him on there because he's white. No, whether he was black or white doesn't matter. What matters is that he was a great player, one of the all-time greats. So put him on that list. And then the fourth player who I believe should be on that list is a tough one. If I had a chance to pick who should be on that list, I would go with Adrian Dantley. Now, Adrian Dantley was a very underrated scorer during the 80s when he played for the Mavericks and for the Pistons when he won those championships with Detroit in the late 80s. But Adrian Dantley was consistently one of the top 10 scorers in terms of points per game during his time in the NBA. He's a Hall of Famer. He had a wicked jump shot. He was a solid low post player. So Adrian Dantley, the fact that he has over 25,000 points in his career, he should also be on that list as well. So those are the four players that should be on the list, and they should replace the four players I mentioned previously that should not be on that list for reasons I explained earlier. So that's my take on the 75 greatest players listing, and also my take on the NBA so far this season. When you have the opportunity, fans, make sure to subscribe to the channel, post your comments in terms of what you think of who should be on that list, who should not be on that list. Also give your insights in terms of who you think is the top teams in the East and Western Conference of the NBA. Well, that does it for me. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Talking Sports with TC. Have a wonderful Wednesday. Take care, and God bless.